scene, we have Misty Livingston doing the technology side of the house. She is the Associate Director for Multicultural Affairs and Black Student Services. And in honor of Latinx Heritage Month, we bring you the Latinx Heritage Month virtual series. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m., look for an exciting lineup. On every occasion of our gathering together, we want to acknowledge that we gather as the University of La Verne on the traditional land of the Tongva peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. Today, we are honored to have with us Quintilia Avila, California Director of Civic Engagement, and Yesenia Rodriguez, I don't know if she's on yet or not, California Civic Engagement Program Manager from NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, which is the nation's largest leading Latino civic engagement organization. For over 25 years, NALEO's mission has been to make sure Latinos have a full voice in American democracy. NALEO is a national, bipartisan, not-for-profit organization. Today's presentation is titled Rise Up, Ve y Vota. And there's some subtitles in there too. I will let our keynote speakers share that detail with you later. But before they speak, let me share a little bit about our keynote speakers today. Quintilia Avila serves as the California Director of Civic Engagement for NALEO Educational Fund, where she is responsible for developing, leading, managing, and overseeing a broad range of activities focused on supporting the organization's civic engagement agenda that includes naturalization, voter education, engagement, and protection, and other civic engagement and leadership efforts in the Latino community. Ms. Avila served as the Regional Program Manager, Southern California Lead for the California Complete Count Census 2020 office, where she managed outreach and education efforts to ensure all Californians were counted or accounted for in the census. She also served as Program Manager of the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California for 15 years, where she developed her expertise in project administration, resource and staff management, interpersonal skills, and medical research. And talk about the need for medical research right now. A lot of that, right? In addition, Ms. Avila has taught at the university and community college levels. While in graduate school, she worked at MALDEF, administering their parent leadership program with Spanish-speaking parents in the LA area. In 2000, she worked at the first California Complete Count office. Now, joining her is Yesenia Rodriguez, who serves as the California Civic Engagement Program Manager, where she manages and executes a wide array of activities central to the programmatic goals of the organization's civic engagement program, which includes naturalization promotion and assistance, nonpartisan voter engagement, education and protection efforts, and strategic civic engagement capacity building, technical training and assistance for local nonprofits. That is quite an umbrella. That is quite an umbrella.
Misty, girl, I don't know what is going on. Did you try the QR?
But prior to joining the NALEO Educational Fund,
maybe
Yesenia was working.
Log in, just go to it from the
Yes,
QR
Yesenia
code.
was working. Misty, you need to mute yourself.
You know what I'm saying?
Misty, I'm sorry. Could you mute yourself?
Sorry, my apologies.
Prior to joining the NALEO's Educational Fund, Yesenia was working as a community organizer for a grassroots nonprofit organization where she mobilized community members to become civically engaged and take part in the decision-making in their own neighborhoods. She also managed and developed a county-wide initiative where she provided capacity building skills to community leaders. In addition, she recently led a redistricting project with Los Angeles City Council Redistricting Commission and provided outreach and training to engage residents in various districts in the city of LA. Talk about being on the ground and doing the hard work. So I really appreciate both of our speakers who are going to share from their really breadth and scope of expertise in the area of engaging and what it means to be involved in and be civically engaged and to vote ultimately, right? So please welcome Quintilia and Yesenia. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Quintilia.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm going to please confirm that I can share my screen and you see it. And if you can tell me with your voice that you can see it.
I see it.
Fantastic. Great. So we appreciate the invitation to present here at the University of Laverne today. Gracias, Daniel and Misty, for inviting us to speak to you. We are very excited, and hopefully we don't have too many technical issues. You know how that goes. We want to share some vital civic engagement information with y'all. I'm glad this is being recorded so you can share that with people who have missed today. Each civic engagement bucket that we're going to speak on can have a webinar of its own. There's so much information, but we're going to keep it at a high level today. You can ask questions during the presentation via the chat. We have some colleagues from NALEO Educational Fund who will be able to answer your questions as we go along. And also, we'll also answer some questions during the live Q&A. So if you don't know NALEO Educational Fund, it's the nation's leading nonprofit organization that fully facilitates the Latino participation in the American political process from citizenship to public service. We were established in 1991. We're headquartered here in Los Angeles with regional offices in Florida, Texas, the Mid-Atlantic, and also in the Northeast. To fulfill our mission, we have three major strategies. They are public research and advocacy, constituency services, and civic engagement. Our PRA department focuses on naturalization advocacy. They work with our DC fellows, and for example, they work on increasing Latino congressional staff representation. Our CS department works with Latino elected officials and provides trainings and forums directly to those elected officials. Within the CE department, our three pillars of work are elections, naturalization, and census and redistricting or / redistricting, because they're very connected, and you'll see why. And generally, I would send this over to Yesenia, but I'm not sure she's on yet. If not, I will continue on. Yesenia, are you there? And if she is, she'll talk to you about voting. All right, if you can ping me, Yesenia, when you are on board. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about voting. I'll give you just a little bit of background on our Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was a landmark piece of federal legislation that prohibits racial discrimination in voting. As you know, a variety of American citizens have been had the right to vote, but there are a lot of reasons they were barred from voting. So this law outlawed discriminatory voting practices that were adopted since the Civil War. So we had a long history of practices that really prohibited people from voting. So this act bans the use of literacy tests, provides oversight for voter registration in areas where there's less than 50% of the non-white population, and had not registered to vote, and has authorized the U.S. Attorney General to investigate the use of poll taxes in state and local elections. I don't know if you're aware, but there were some people who were charged a poll tax in order just to vote. So why is voting important? Voting is.
Julia, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm here. I apologize again, technical difficulties. But hi everyone. I'm Yesenia. If you'd like, I can take over from here.
Yes.
I had to figure out a way to log in, so I'm on my phone. So because of that, I have to keep my camera off just to figure out where to put it. If that's fine with everyone.
That's fine with me, Yesenia. That's okay with me. So
That works.
if you like, we are in the why is voting important slide. If you want to start with voting as your right.
Of course. Thank you, Quintilia, for taking over. So yeah, so as we're talking about voting, we want to know why it's important, right? And as you mentioned, a little bit history behind it. It's definitely a right. It's a basic right. Uh, During these times, you still have folks that don't have the privilege to vote, so they're counting on us and our votes, right? It's important because it's power. We have the power to shape the future. Uh, we make very important decisions when we cast our votes. We decide how our tax dollars will be spent and what policies and laws will be implemented. And as you all have heard, yes, every vote does count. We know sometimes that a lot of folks might feel that their vote doesn't matter, but it definitely does make a difference. And I can share from experience of a election that occurred in the city of Compton. The city of Compton has its own government. They have their own mayor, they have their own city council members. And in the recent election, one of the council members actually voted one by one vote. Right. So whoever that person that decided that day, well, you know what, I'm going to go cast my vote. Well, they make that difference. So never let anyone tell you otherwise, because it is extremely important. That you go vote, and it does make a very direct impact in your community. So voting today. So there's various ways we can all take part in the political process, right? So we can vote by mail. Every California registered voter will receive their vote by mail. And you can go ahead and drop it off in the mail or in other parts of the county. We also have drop boxes, valid drop boxes, right? You could also vote early. Again, in other counties, they have early voting locations. So I know in LA County, you have up to 11 days before election day to go out and vote. And also you have the option of voting in person, which is a traditional way that people kind of are used to. So once you get your ballot, the places or the polling locations are in the back of your ballot. And also we provide our hotline number that we'll be giving later on in the presentation. You can call to find the local polling place in your area. So are you eligible to vote? Some of you, these are some requirements, right? You might be eligible, you might not. You must be a U.S. citizen. You do have to be 18 years or older on election day. Not currently serving as a state or federal prison term for eviction for conviction of a felony, or not currently found mentally incompetent to vote. You can also pre-register to vote at 16 or 17 years old. So once you turn 18, you're already registered and ready to vote. And there was a new California law that if you are in probation, you are also eligible to cast your vote. So now we all know why it's important. Now you know if you're eligible. Now you want to know, okay, well, I'm ready. How do I register? What do I do? What are the next steps, right? So we have 3 easy ways where you can register to vote. You can go to the registertovote.ca.gov to complete an online application. You can also go to the different government office, such as the DMV, the post office, public libraries, where they actually have a paper application. Just keep in mind that some offices are closed because we're still in a pandemic. So that's why I would encourage everyone to register online. It's just a very simple and easy way to do it. Now, if you can't for any reason navigate the website or you can't obtain an application, you could request one by mail by calling the California Voter Hotline number, which is 1-800-345-VOTE. And then I know one of our colleagues is on the line, so she will be actually sharing all that information on the chat with us for you guys to know. So now we want to know if any of you are registered. So if you guys can either answer this question on the chat, we would like to know. I'm still trying to figure out how to see the chat from my phone, but I'm sure my team is looking at those answers right now. And I think it's so important. It's one of the simplest things that you can do to become civically engaged. Ooh, I see a lot of thumbs up. I love it. Thank you, guys. And now I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Quintilia, who's going to be talking a little bit more about the data that NALEO has researched on Latino and voting.
Thank you so much, Yesenia. I'm so glad you're able to join us. Despite technical difficulties, here we are. So yes, Latinos in voting, we are part of, thank you, Marta, for putting that on the chat. Please continue to answer the question. We're really curious to know how many of you are registered to vote. So please answer your questions on the chat. So this is more about Latinos in voting. So this gives you the number of where we're at now based on the 2020 census. About 22 million people in California are registered to vote. As you know, you might have heard from the last census in 2020 last year, we have about 40 million Californians, and about half of that are registered voters. And from those registered voters, about 6 million are Latino. So that's about almost 28% of the California residents are Latino voters. Yay, and we want to get that number up. So this slide tells you a little bit more of the age breakdown and what it says. So I want you to look at the Latino population here and then the non-Latino on your right. So on the left, Latinos 18-24 and 25-34, which we call the young demographic, is a very large population. I would say almost half of the Latino population are young. If you compare that to Latinos, the non-Latinos, excuse me, on your left, on your right, sorry, those 50 and older comprise almost 50% of the registered voters. So what does that mean? We know that non-Latino voters are older, and we also know they're consistent voters who vote in almost every election. And we want to get Latinos here, these young Latinos, to be not only young registered Latinos, but active voters. So we want to make sure that you are lifelong voters, and that you hope that you continue to ensure fair representation and participate in all civic engagement throughout this country. Now, I took the liberty of looking at the statistics that you have at University of Laverne. As you can see, we're just talking about representation. So here's a racial and ethnic background from your ULB website. So over 55% of your students identify as Latinos. I want to pose a question to you. You do not have to answer it. If you want to, you can, but is your leadership, that means your student government, your faculty, your administration, is it representative of your student population? And that's what we're always advocating for. Let me tell you a little bit about voting challenges amongst Latinos. So generally, as we mentioned, fair representation is contingent on participation by Latinos. Here are some barriers that contribute to the voting challenges among Latinos. One, research shows or suggests that there exist concerns about the trustworthiness of the election process. There's mis and disinformation. We've seen an increase of mis and disinformation, not only in elections, but in COVID-19. And that's been happening since 2016 and even before. So that impacts their willingness to vote. Also, while many jurisdictions are making what we call VBM, vote by mail, more accessible, and certainly the state of California has made has currently made VBM available to all Californians because of the pandemic. Research shows that most Latinos tend to have lower VBM usage and overall on the overall population, or than the overall population. And I can tell you that from personal experience, my dad and I had a tradition of going to vote together. So traditionally, Latinos like to vote in person. And also, there's a lack of knowledge or lack of information. They often fail to know what their voting rights are. So speaking of Latino engagement, just to let you know a little bit more, we Latinos fail to know where their voting center is, what the hours are, where they register, and even that they are legally able to take 4 hours of paid time to vote. I don't know if you knew that, but everybody has the right to take 4 hours to go vote at every election. Latinos are not informed or invited to participate, and this contributes to the suppression of the Latino vote. Latinos still face the obstacles of accessing voter information and often call our hotline to ask seemingly basic questions. And we can attest to that. We recently did some text banking for the recent California governor recall that happened September 14th in our hotline number. And we work with other collaborators who do a lot of voter protection. And we saw that a lot of the questions were, where can I vote? How long can I vote? Oh, I didn't get my ballot. So those are that research shows us, and our real time hotline tells us that often callers just don't know the basic questions. So there are various challenges and minimal resources that are allocated to education and outreach for our communities, and we need more of that. All parties need to engage Latinos because we are not a monolith. So if all parties would provide information and invite Latinos to engage, there'll be more participation. As you can see here, this formula, more information, more invitations mean more participation. So our hotline operators would help bridge this gap and provide neutral and linguistically accessible information and resource to voters. Now, speaking of challenges, I'm going to have my colleague Yesenia speak on the 2020 census. Yesenia, back to you.
Thank you, Quintilia. Yeah, so one of our big components here at NALEO is actually the census. And the census is done every 10 years and is the count of the total US population and required by the US Constitution. So you might ask yourself, why is this important? As we can see here on the presentation, is a distribution of $800 billion in federal funding. Right, so what are these three elements that you see on the screen? We see the distribution of seats in the US House of Representatives will ensure that there is equal and fair representation. The distribution of our political power and how the new districts will be drawn, and most importantly, the funding. The census distribute funds for schools, hospitals, daycare and after school programs, financial aid, and Pell Grants. And as you know, if you weren't counted under the government's eyes, is as if you don't exist. So we want to make sure that everyone in your household, as little as a 1 month or newborn baby, is counted. Even if they're not your relatives, if you have a friend or neighbor living with you, we want to make sure that everyone is counted. If there is an undercount, there's definitely going to be limited resources for everyone. Now, again, I want to know if any of you or your family completed the census last year. I see some thumbs up. This is great. That means more funds, right? More funds for California, more funds and more resources for us. And remember that the census is done every 10 years. So if you did not get an opportunity to participate this time around, we have another one coming in 2030 in 9 years. So now you are well informed on why you should complete the census. So we hope that you're able to participate with us. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some results that NALEO found for the from the census data. So as we can see on the graph, there was definitely a growth in population within the community, with the Latino community. And if we look specifically in California, we noticed that In 2010, we went from 14 million to about 15 million. Now, if we look at the other graph, we saw a percentage at about 2% increase from 37.6 to about 39.4. During the census, there was a lot of challenges. There was a lot of barriers that we faced. We know that a lot of folks were undercounted. We lost a congressional seat. We were in a pandemic, right? I'm sure there was a lot of organizations that were working towards this campaign and this initiative, and they had to come up with innovative ways to ensure that the community gets counted. And one of those barriers that I want to talk a little bit about is one of the questions that came up on the census. Again, these were simple personal questions that people had to answer. So here's a question for you, for those that filled out the census, right? How did you or your family answer question number 8 and 9 on the census form? If you don't remember those questions, well, we have them on the screen. So the question number 8 asked, are you Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? Now you have different options to choose from. You could choose no, maybe yeah, Mexican, Puerto Rican, or someone from Latin America, right? In my personal experience, I chose the last one because I consider myself, yes, I'm Latino Hispanic, and also Salvadorian because that's my background, right? Now you move on to the next question. What is your race? And you have a couple of options again. And they are, is your race white, black, American Indian, Vietnamese, Korean? There's other options. And we also have the last one that says some other race. Now, in my experience, I don't self-identify myself as any of these races. So I'm sure it caused a lot of confusion in the Latino community, which might have triggered an undercount as well. You know, I felt like I wasn't represented here. A lot of people didn't know how to answer this question. And again, there's no wrong or right answer. It's just the way how you self-identify yourself, right? So for a very long time, Latinos were considered the white race, right? There still might be some Latinos that consider themselves white. That's okay. But when you look at the example that they're providing on the race question, white, it says, an example, German, then we have Lebanese and Egyptian. So, you know, just the thought, if these folks that are Egyptian and Lebanese, would they consider themselves part of the white race? And if you're part of that group, please let us know in the comments if that's something that you would relate to, because I think, you know, this is a very tricky question. I just hope that, you know, this might have altered data results from the census. And I hope that in 10 years, 9 years from now, when the next census comes up, that they can actually make some modifications on this to make it more inclusive and make it comfortable for people to answer so we can get an accurate data. So with that being said, you know, again, there was barriers, there was challenges that we faced, there was unanswered questions on the census. Despite that, we saw a significant growth in the Latino community nationwide. We grew from 50.5 million in 2010 to 62.1 million now in 2020. Right, nearly one of every five of our residents nationwide is perhaps a Latino. It grew from 16.3% to 18.7%. So now we can be, you know, Latinos continue to be the nation's second largest population group. Our nation must address issues that affect our Latino community. And with that, now that California is made up of about 40% of Latino community, we need to see that. We need to see that fair representation. We need to see diversity. If you can move on to the thank you. And these are just a few Latinos elected and appointed officials who are first-time Latinos. having this seat in office. Yes, to that trumpet. I'm seeing all the little reactions you guys are posting, and I love it. Um, yeah, it's, these are, we have 40% of Latinos in California. We need to make sure that our representatives uh, think like us and are representing those issues that affect everyone, right? So right here we have Alex Padilla, who is currently the U.S. Senator who was appointed by the governor. We have Nuri Martinez, president of Los Angeles City Council. We also have Javier Becerra, the first Latino United States Secretary of Health and Human Services. He was actually a former attorney general in California and one out of two cabinet members in the nation. And we also have Nora Vargas, who is the first Latina to hold a position in the County Board of Supervisors in San Diego. And again, we want to make sure that there's diversity in Congress representing us at a state level, at a local level, and also in the nation level, right? So with that, I did want to share a video. If we're able to, I'm not sure if it's ready. If we have a thumbs up for the video of when Governor Newsom gave the news to Alex Padilla that he will be now the U.S. Senator.
So Yesenia, we had some technical difficulties, but if you'd like to explain what the video is supposed to see.
Yeah,
Sure.
of course. So here in this video, and maybe we can share it on the chat so people can look at it at a later time, shows when Governor Newsom called Senator Alex Padilla and gave him the news that he will now be representing California he will become the U.S. Senator. And I think it's very important because he comes from an immigrant background. He has a long history of being in office. He was also, I believe, a city council member, a congressman, and is now, leading California and representing us. And it just shows that we need more people that are representing us and that look like us to ensure that they know what struggles we're facing in the Latino community or in the underserved communities, right? So I think it's important to highlight that and elect these folks that are doing the right thing for the Latino community. And
If
I believe
can add, Yesenia,
Go
can
ahead.
I add a
Go
little bit
ahead.
to that?
Go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you. I think Daniel mentioned how emotional he got when Governor Newsom, it was that was captured on video. I think it was done over Zoom, and it showed the emotion. And he asked about, Governor Newsom asked him about his mother, what his mother would think. And, his mom was like, I think was a childcare provider, and his dad was a cook at a restaurant. So they were immigrant parents, and this is his young Latino who went to MIT and ended up being an LA council member, as Yesenia mentioned, and now was going to had the opportunity to be the very first modern day Latino to represent California. So it's a huge, huge moment, and if you ever just want to look at that video, it's very humbling, it's very touching, and we're so glad that he represents us in the great state of California.
Yes, thank you for adding that, Quintilia. And with that, you might ask yourselves, well, how can I ensure that there's actually a fair representation? How can I ensure that there's diversity in my districts, right? So now Quintilia is going to talk a little bit about redistricting and how this works, is how this helps draw lines for new districts.
Great, thank you, Yesenia. And before I continue on really quickly on redistricting, I know that's a really probably intimidating word. I just want to add that the decennial census, as she mentioned, is not the only questionnaire you receive from the U.S. Census Bureau. You won't you will hear definitely of the U.S. Census Bureau between now and the next census. The U.S. Census utilizes various instruments such as the decennial census and the American Community Survey, to continue gathering important data from now until 2030. So look out for those instruments. So what is redistricting? It means drawing new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each district, electoral district. In this case, you can see we start with the census. If we look at the arrows, it impacts what the redistricting process is, and then it impacts the representation. So these redrawing of legislative districts at all levels of government include Congress, state legislators, counties, cities, and even your school board district. Why redraw redistricting maps? So the reason that they're redrawn is because communities change. People are born, people die, and people move. And we have seen that happen a lot during the pandemic. Communities grow and they shrink. And also areas where there used to be roughly the same number of people become unequal. So we're always seeking equality here. So this is just a lot of information, but basically the census really feeds into redistricting and reapportionment. And reapportionment is a fancy way of saying that Congress should have fair representation based on the census population. So that's why it's important that everybody fill out the census, because if we don't have enough people filling out the census, we will not have fair representation. And in fact, California lost 1 congressional seat after the 2020 census, yet Texas gained 2 seats. You might question, or we're questioning ourselves, is it because of the undercount that Yesenia mentioned? Is it because of, that you mentioned the challenges of the 2020 census? Is it the high cost of living? Is it both? Is it more? There are various reasons why we have less people in California, but impacts us not only money, but power and representation, as you spoke earlier. So we're looking for fair representation. In California, we are lucky that we have a citizens commission that draws the line for the whole state. But other states are usually done by elected officials. So it make you question like how if the elected officials can really be objective and redrawing those lines. So as NALEO usually is involved in various civic engagement, this campaign called Latinos Draw the Lines, it's almost over for now. We are now awaiting the maps to be revealed within the next month. This means that your current Congress member may not be your representative in the future or in the next elections that are coming next year. Boundaries need to be finalized soon for the midterm elections. So you can see that the goal of our campaign is to make sure there's fair opportunity to choose elected officials and their representatives, that they comply with the U.S. Constitution and Federal Voting Rights Act, that it's a fair and transparent, that the public gets to have a meaningful opportunity to be engaged and to be heard. And so our colleagues with this campaign really mobilize the Latino community. Some of you may have been part of some of those webinars, virtual workshops that we recently had. So we're looking forward to seeing those maps. So that was the redistricting. We're going to move over quickly to naturalization. Naturalization is one of the items that are pillars of our work in civic engagement here in NALEO that probably trigger the most emotional response, and that's for 2 reasons. One, we get to assist people who have they've taken a long time to make a decision to become naturalized citizens. What we call LPRs, lawful permanent residents, usually take 10 to 20 years to actually decide to become a U.S. citizen. And this is part of their identity. That's part of like, are they officially leaving their homeland? So it's a very emotional process, not only for the participants, the LPRs themselves, but for us as NALEO staff, we get to hear back from them when they tell us that they've completed their swearing-in ceremony. So that's very exciting, like that we see people go through the whole process from application to having the legal review and then finally getting the swearing-in ceremony. That's super exciting. So just to give you some information on the background of naturalization, I became a naturalized citizen. My parent and my family became a naturalized citizen actually through NALEO in the 1990s. So full circle, I'm working back here. But we are about 9.1 of the total 13 million green card holders in the U.S. are able to naturalize. So Latinos have a large portion of who are LPRs. At NALEO Educational Fund, we aim to eliminate many of the barriers to citizenship by ensuring that people know that they are eligible, they can access information, they can have direct assistance with their application process, and also apply for fee waivers through our naturalization workshops. We recently had two workshops here in California and then one in Florida. And we continue to conduct these virtual workshops throughout the pandemic and service individuals through their naturalization process through the hotline one-on-one. And just to give you an idea how much power Latinos have, we are the largest immigrant population that has formed the new naturalized voters. As you can see, 1 in 10 US eligible voters in 2020 were Latino. So about 34% of the LPRs are eligible to become voters, and we have a strong Latino power. So it's not only do we account for the most eligible voters, but we also have the largest eligible LPRs to become naturalized citizens. And within Latinos, Mexicans are the largest demographic group that are eligible to become citizens. So we've talked to you about the census, we've talked to you about voting, we've talked to you about redistricting. And so now you're saying, well, great, what do I do with this all information? How do I make a difference? And now Yesenia will talk to you about that. Yesenia?
I'm here. Yeah, so thank you, Quintilia. As you mentioned, here at NALEO, we do everything related to civic engagement. So you might ask yourself, well, what can I do? How can I make an impact? How can I get involved? Well, I'm going to share 3 very simple ways you can get involved. And again, you're not limited to these are just some ideas of things that you can do that will make a direct impact in your community. First of all, let's know who's representing us, right? Know who your elected officials are. Who is representing you at a local level, at a state level? Who's your congressperson? Who's your city council member? Follow them on social media. Once you have that information, most of our elected officials are very active. They're sharing a lot of vital information. That's a way where you can find out what issues they're working on, what bills are they currently passing. That's so important to know, right? Another thing that we talked about, register to vote. Make your voice heard is one of the simplest things that we can do. You can make a direct impact in your community. You can also, vote for those who aren't eligible to vote. And if you don't already know, our next scheduled election will be on June 7, 2022. Another thing that you can do is volunteer. There's so many nonprofits out there that are seeking volunteers year round. And it's a way where you can kind of learn, get some experience, and just do some research on what programs these nonprofits or a specific nonprofit is following. What is their mission? Do you align with their mission and their values? Is it something that interests you? Another thing you could do is volunteer for a candidate who's running for office, right? When there's an election coming up, there's a lot of candidates that are doing meet and greets, right? They want to meet their constituents as well as you want to meet them, right? You want to make sure what is their plan, what are issues that they're going to be tackling, and you want to make sure that you let them know what issues are important to you. And we know that we're still in a pandemic, but something that community members are still doing is, they're hosting community events. That looks different. It can be a virtual community event. I know there's neighborhoods that have a community cleanup. Get to know your neighbors. Sometimes, I know because of the pandemic, it makes it a little bit hard, but let's look at different options where we can get together, plan something, unite, and make our community a better place. And another thing you can also do is you can participate in our National Voter Registration Day, which is September 28th. So the purpose of this is to create a broad awareness of voter registration opportunities to register as many people as possible. Volunteers across the country participate in registering people to vote. Again, we're not endorsing any candidates, political party, or any ballot measures. Maybe you want to reach out to the civic engagement department and see if they're planning something. Maybe you and your friends, or maybe you're part of a club and you want to host an activity to get those folks that are eligible to vote to register to vote. And I also wanted to share that we do have a voter information hotline. My colleague will be sharing that number on the chat. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's a nonpartisan. They're not going to give you information on who you should vote for, who you shouldn't vote for. It's more of a call center where you can get information as where's your closest polling location, maybe when the next election is. It is bilingual English and Spanish, and they're trained professionals that will provide you with the correct resources. Now, in order for us, to participate and get civically engaged, we need to feel good. We need to be healthy, right? So, along with Kaiser Permanente, we started a Juntos Podemos campaign, which is designed to empower the Latinos to stop the spread of COVID-19 and increase vaccine uptake and combat misinformation. We know that there's been a lot of myths and a lot of not reliable information given to us. So we want to make sure that we provide our community with the viable sources to encourage them to get vaccinated. We will also be sharing a link where you can sign up for any updates about our Juntos Podemos campaign. And also when you sign up, you'll be able to obtain information on other things that we're working on here in NALEO. And like we talked about, I did want to share some resources. These links will be dropped on the chat for your reference. We're going to be sharing the NALEO website so you can check out, what we're doing, what we worked on, kind of get familiarize yourself a little bit more with our organization. Information on the National Voter Registration Day. You can register to become a partner and host an activity. Information on where to register to vote, right? We know that some folks might not remember if they register, so you don't know your registration status. So we're going to share that. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but if you currently moved, you need to make sure that you pre-register again, because they want to make sure that they have up-to-date information on that. So if you have recently moved to a different zip code area, you want to make sure that you register once again. And like I mentioned, we want to get to know our representatives who are representing us at a state level, at a local level, and these two websites will give you that information. All you have to do is share, input your address, and they will direct you to your elected officials. Once you get there, you can click on their website and learn more about the work that they're doing. And finally, a website that I use when there's an election coming up is Voters Edge California, and pretty much it gives you a run through of what's on your ballot. We know that when we get the ballot is there's a lot of jargon on it, right? We might not understand what certain propositions mean, certain measures. So this kind of explains to you in simpler terms, and it gives you information on the pros and the cons, if there's any candidates, who's endorsing these candidates, and the work that they've done and that they're planning on doing. So I would highly encourage you to check all these websites out. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Misty and Daniel for any questions or comments.
we want to invite the community. We have a bit of time here, but first of all, I want to thank Quintilia and Yesenia for the wealth of information that you've shared. And as you mentioned, each of these module sections could be its own presentation. So I appreciate receiving the Cliff Notes version of it, but yet it was quite a bit. So we would like to open it up to our audience for any questions that you have that you're just curious about. A lot of information shared. And so we invite you to either put it in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself and put your question out there to either Quintilia or to Yesenia.
I don't have a question, but more of a comment. I know that Francisco is on the line. Francisco, if community engagement is doing anything, could you share that, please?
I will definitely share that with everyone.
Francisco, were you going to share it in the chat or?
So it's really just.
Yeah,
Oh,
finding my link real quick.
So
sorry
maybe
about
that might
that.
be one way to
No
get
worries.
to our.
For you guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Were you guys, I'm sure probably you guys already knew, but I know Quintilia shared that graph of the university and the numbers of Latinos that are actually attending that university. So I'm just wondering if you guys were surprised by that number. Did you guys know that? And yeah, that was just my thought.
I have to go back to the the image that you shared, actually. There was a lot of information on that image that you shared about the university. I don't know if you could pull it back up.
Give me 1 second.
Well, the basic answer is that we're very well aware of it because we're an HSI, a Hispanic Serving Institution, and we've had significant numbers of Latinx students since the 1990s. In fact, we obtained a Title III grant in 1989. And Title III basically indicated at that point that we had tipped and that in fact the numbers of first gens and students from disadvantaged areas had become the major element in our school.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. I appreciate that historical framing for it, because I think the other question that comes up for me, and I don't know that we know this, is it does reflect our experience, but I'm curious how it might reflect in terms of voting, taking initiative to vote. How well does our community vote? Are we proactive? And I know that Francisco has been a part of an ongoing campus effort to engage the campus community in terms of engaging the community around the importance of voting and registering to vote. And so he's put some information. They're having something with National Voter Registration Day on September 28th. So they continue to be actively involved in encouraging participation, civic and community participation. So we want to just do a shout out to them for that. And because I think oftentimes there's a lot of educational stuff that you all have shared that is sort of overwhelming sometimes. And I think yet, for at least folks here in the academic space, unless you're a political science major, you're focused on a whole lot of other things. But don't lose sight of these other things that have impact and import, for ultimately who you are and the communities you belong to as well. right? I think that's sort of the framing that you've sort of put out there, Yesenia and Quintilia. At least that's what I hear. You know, you need to be, because I was thinking about, you know, unless we take a participatory role, we're letting others make decisions for us. And ultimately, we don't like that. I don't think any of us like that. But there's no other way to then head that off than actually to get involved and vote. And I know it takes extra effort. So you know, I need to own that myself, you know. So I try to be involved and engaged as best I can. I know it's challenging.
I want
But
to.
other,
Oh,
go ahead.
Daniel, thank you. I wanted to also thank you all for coming, and then specifically our NALEO folks. So much appreciation, even due to the technical difficulties. My apologies. I know that you all have previously sent me some information on citizenship. So if you have that readily available, might you be able to share it in the chat, please?
What specifically about citizenship are you
I know
asking?
that you had a like a workshop on citizenship where you were providing information. Um,
So let me, hopefully this can clarify it.
okay.
Last Friday, the 17th was National Citizenship Day. So NALEO did have an event nationwide that we had like an extraordinary now of callers. We had like 6,000 callers coming into our hotline, which was way above and beyond that we usually have. So that's a National Citizenship Day where we encourage people to start the naturalization process. So the naturalization workshops, if that's what you're referring to, we have through that 1-800 number that was listed, you can call information to either for NALEO to one-on-one work with you to start the naturalization process, filling out your application, making sure you have all your documents. We'll have a lawyer review that. But if your case is a little bit more complicated, say you have a DUI or there's a other type of legal issue, we will refer you to our partners who work with the New Americans campaign to assist you if you need if your case is a little bit more complex and want maybe one-on-one assistance, or you want to go in person. So there's some options, but you can call the 1-800 number and get you started.
Thank you so much. That is exactly what I was looking for.
Well, Quintilia and Yesenia, on behalf of all of us, thank you for your presentation. And I also want to acknowledge, you know, your other colleagues who jumped on board to assist as well. Thank you to Omar and Marta as well. I think there was somebody else. I don't want to miss them, but thank you to them. And just to remind everyone that this is a weekly series. Next week, we're actually going to be doing on the 29th, we're going to be focusing on cultural patriarchy in the Latino community. And we'll have a panel of mujeres from the community share their perspective and experiences around that, to be followed by Enrique Morones on October 6th around immigration and border angels. And then finally finishing up with Barbara Carrasco, the Dolores Huerta lithograph muralist who actually had a mural censored. So some exciting opportunities. You're certainly all invited again. And on behalf of all of us, again, thank you, Yesenia and Quintilia and NALEO, for the work that you do and continue to do. So adelante siempre. Keep at it.
Gracias a
Thank
todos.
you.
And thank you all for attending as well.